Hello, this is Janet Michael. In addition to hosting The Valley Today each weekday at noon on the River 95.3, I also produce podcasts. And I'm excited to kick off Season 2 of our podcast series in partnership with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. It's called We Are REC. Every week we'll release a new episode talking to different people from REC about a host of different topics. We'll get tips for saving money on your electric bill. We'll talk about renewable energy and the impact it can have in our communities. We'll get some behind-the-scenes info about what happens when the power goes out in a storm. Don't miss out on information about community grants, scholarships, REC-hosted events, and more. Get every single episode on our website at theriver953.com under the podcast tab, or you can subscribe for free in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or on Spotify. Just do a quick search for We Are REC. Hello and welcome to The Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. Happy Thursday. As you are listening to the show today, we, however, have pre-recorded our conversation over Zoom on a Monday afternoon. A brand newbie to the show today is Larry Weiss. He is the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. And Larry, I think you and I have lived somewhat of a parallel life without ever really running into each other and having an in-depth conversation. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, twin brothers and sisters from different mothers or something to that effect. And it's a pleasure to be joining you. Thank you.
And I have a base knowledge of the Community Foundation only because a dear friend of mine many years ago was the executive director. And so she kind of gave me the overview way back when over coffee. But I know it's changed a lot. So tell me, what is the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley?
Well, sure. Actually, the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley was founded in 2001. So we're looking forward to celebrating our 20-year anniversary beginning next year. And we are an organization that serves the city of Winchester, also Clark, Frederick, and Warren County, Virginia. And we fulfill our mission by connecting philanthropic individuals with nonprofit agencies in our service area.
And it's interesting, we were chatting before we started recording for the radio show, and you were explaining to me that a lot of times nonprofit agencies will receive funding from you that they then dole out to their groups of people, and they have no idea that the money originally came from the Community Foundation.
That's exactly right, and that's the case in many times, because what the Community Foundation will do, and keep in mind, we're one of more than 800 community foundations across the country. Most communities of any size have one. It's not a competitive business, so there are not other community foundations serving Winchester, Clark County, Frederick County, Front Royal, and Warren County. But as a tax-exempt public charity, we're dedicated to improving the quality of life in a specific geographic region, and we're that entity that allows philanthropic donors in a community to make contributions to charitable organizations in a way that allows them to follow all the IRS guidelines. Because as we all know, there are IRS guidelines that are impacting both persons who want to make contributions as well as agencies that want to receive them. So one of the things that we are able to do is be that conduit organization that makes sure that those contributions protect both the donor and the recipient by ensuring that they follow IRS regulations. So in many cases, agencies in our area, and there's probably 10 or 12 in the Front Royal Warren County area that are receiving contributions and grants from funds that are managed and distributed by the Community Foundation of the Northern Shenandoah Valley. But when the agency or the individual receives that contribution, they may see it coming from another agency or a donor fund and not realize that the Community Foundation of the Northern Shenandoah Valley was that entity that made the connection, set up the process so the nonprofit could in fact compete and look to get a grant from that donor.
And it seems to me like it's a great organization for someone, and maybe I'm pigeonholing this too much, but say I have a vast wealth, and this is, they say you put it out there and then it happens. So we're going to see how that works. But let's say I am alive. Well, I don't want to talk about estates or trusts at this point, but let's say I have money and I want to make sure that a certain percentage of my money goes to helping the homeless. I can then come to you and say, I'd like to set something up where I give you $1 million or I give you $300,000 a year for the next 10 years. And I want you to make sure that this money goes to places that help serve the homeless. Is that it in a simplified way?
In a very simplified way, yeah. In fact, we should change positions here, and I will interview you because, yeah, in a nutshell, you've got it. But you're exactly right. So there's a couple ways that happens. We offer two ways that a philanthropic individual, as you've described, can do this. One of which is through what is known as an endowed fund. And these are the original investments that people think of when they think of foundations. And the way an endowed fund works is that individual that you described gives us a sum of money. And I like the sound of $1 million. That has a very nice ring to it. And then that fund is established. The principal amount remains intact. And every year a distribution, typically about 4%, is granted and goes out for charitable purposes. So the principal continues to build over time. And it really is. It is a perpetual trust, vehicle that is used for the long-term growth, support, and development of an entity.
And I hate to use this as an example because I am personally a James Wood Colonel. So it pains me to use the phrase Handley High School, but that may be one of the most recognizable endowments that people in our community know, because Handley High School is an endowed high school.
Right. And at some point, that's exactly right. I mean, obviously, we do not deal with that endowment, but you're exactly right. Every year, forever and ever, and literally in perpetuity, there's going to be a distribution every year that entity is going to receive. We also have something that's a relatively new investment vehicle at the Community Foundation, and that is a non-endowed donor advised funds. And in the non-endowed fund, the donors can make grants above just that 4% distribution. So they have a lot more flexibility in the amount of money that they can distribute every year. And quite honestly, we have a number of very aggressive non-endowed donor advised funds that are making pretty substantial grants right into the Front Royal Warren County community and are impacting organizations like the Shenandoah Area Boy Scouts Council, St. Luke's Community Clinic, the Salvation Army of Front Royal, the Humane Society of Warren County, and some others. And there are a number of organizations that are benefiting directly in Warren County and Front Royal from contributions made by persons who have non-endowed donor advised funds with the Community Foundation of the Northern Shenandoah Valley.
And is there typically a base amount? I mean, I joked at $1 million or $300,000 a year. I mean, I couldn't come to you and say, hey, I want to give you $3,000 a year or a month. Can you set this up for me? Is there like a base amount of money that you need in order to set up an endowment or a non-endowed fund?
Yeah, there is a base, and it's the same for a donor advised fund or a fund that a nonprofit agency would set up. It is a minimum $5,000 balance to establish a fund. You do have a 3-year vesting period to make that full $5,000 contribution. And in some cases, we have gone as long as 5 years, depending on the circumstance, to get that investment fully funded. So you don't have to be able to write the big check initially. You only have to have a goal to at some point be a philanthropist. And what I like to tell people sometimes is that, you think about buying a car, Janet, and you go out and you take a 5-year note and, you send Toyota Credit or GMAC or somebody money every month. And at the end of 5 years, you own your car and it's worth half of what you paid for it. And another way to use that 5-year term, you could put $83 away every month for 5 years, and in 5 years have funded a fund with the community foundation that you could then hold and make charitable distributions with, and particularly younger people. So somebody younger might not know what their long-term philanthropic interest might be, but they can begin to assemble the assets that would allow them to realize some charitable goals once they got to a point in life where they knew that a particular focus was important to them, whether it was education, food relief, housing, or some other need in the community that they wanted to address.
I love that. It's like saving for retirement, but it's really saving for philanthropy.
It is. And in this case, your assets are appreciating, not depreciating.
That's true. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, can we talk about the flip side of that? If a business, for example, wants to set something up so they can do the same thing. I know that the Community Foundation manages the chain of checks. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you kind of take the heat off of WINC, for example, of having to maintain and manage and distribute that money, because we're in a similar situation with our Camping for Hunger campaign. And I think it would be great for businesses to know how easy it is for them to get into the philanthropic game. Can we talk a little bit about that in the next segment?
We certainly can.
All right, we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. We are having a conversation today over Zoom with Larry Weiss. He is the executive director of the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. This is The Valley Today. I am Janet Michael, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Do you know anyone who is struggling with financial hardships because of coronavirus? Our new webinar called Coping with the Money Crunch can help. We'll talk about immediate options to consider, revising or creating a spending plan, and lots of community resources. Then we'll cover how to narrow your priorities, contact creditors, and avoid scams and risky loans. The webinar is free, and you can either join by phone or through Zoom on a smartphone, tablet, or computer. You can find out more by visiting the Northern Shenandoah Valley Financial Education Program on Facebook or calling Karen Poff at 540-635-4549. Let me show you how to make your own plan or help someone you care about get through the crisis. Call 635-4549 or visit at NSV Financial Education on Facebook today.
Welcome back to The Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. Happy Thursday as you're listening to the show today. We, of course, have pre-recorded it over Zoom on a Monday afternoon. We are having an interesting conversation today with Larry Weiss. He is the executive director at the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. And in the first segment, Larry, we talked a bit about how I, as an individual, could use the Community Foundation to build my philanthropic measures down the road. And when we went to break, I was asking you if businesses can do the same thing, because I know that the Community Foundation manages, for example, chain of checks. So how does something like that work if there's a business out there that wants to align itself with a nonprofit, but doesn't want to have to go through all of the hoops and do everything that's required in order to get to that end result?
Well, the way that happens, and the example that you just talked about, is through what we call a fiscal agency sponsorship. And you referenced chain of checks. We also do that for a number of other organizations. The Nonprofit Alliance of the Northern Shenandoah Valley is another agency that we're the fiscal agent for. We also work with the Coats for Kids programs, both in Winchester with the Winchester Rotary, as well as down in Front Royal and Warren County with the Rotary clubs there. And the way these programs work, simplified of course, is that for an ongoing community project, like Chain of Checks, for example, or Coats for Kids, or the one I know that you folks do, Camping for Hunger, would be another example. If it's an ongoing program, we can act as a fiscal agency sponsorship, and there is a contractual arrangement that has to be initiated to make this happen. But in functioning as a fiscal agent, the community foundation, because we are a tax-exempt public charity, becomes that vehicle that a business that wanted to support something like Camping for Hunger could come to us, make that contribution. We could then accept it as a tax-exempt charity, giving the business the tax exemption they're looking for. And then we take and we distribute that money through your Camping for Hunger program, for example, to a legitimate 501c3 charitable organization. So we like to think of those sponsorships as a win-win opportunity to make it easy and a facilitating mechanism to increase the charitable contributions that can come into the program. And we make sure, again, that those agencies that receive the money are legitimate 501c3 organizations. And, you know, rarely are there cases where agencies are trying to, and I hesitate to use the word, but, you know, scam contributions from somebody. But, you know, were that to happen, if a business made a pretty substantial contribution to something that they thought was a 501c3 organization and it turned out not to be, that business could have some tax liability as a result. So the nice thing, again, and the role of the Community Foundation of the Northern Shenandoah Valley is, you know, we're that vetting agency that protects the donor, whether it's an individual or a business, from finding out on the back end that a significant contribution that they made was actually distributed to an agency that was not qualified to get those and extend that tax benefit.
And I would guess that the logistics of everything might sometimes keep business owners, small, medium, or large business owners, from even exploring the avenue of being able to partner with nonprofits and give back to their community in this way, because they probably feel so overwhelmed in what they think the process is and don't realize that the process could be as simple as calling you and saying, this is what I want to do, and you'll do all the legwork and make sure it's all legal and above board.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And you know, one of the things and, you know, in some respects, you and I do similar things. And one of the things that you might see and recognize now over the last few years in dealing with your agencies is nobody has the staff that they once had. So, you know, I remember a time in my business career where, you know, lots of businesses had somebody whose job title was something along the lines of community resource administrator or some such title, and their job was, you know, literally to make sure that that business was interacting with the community at large and knew what was going on and knew where some of those needs were. Well, you know, staffs aren't what they used to be. Everyone's wearing more hats than they want to wear. And that was even before the COVID pandemic. And you're right, for a lot of businesses and individuals, they have the desire to be a philanthropist and support certain things, but just the time and energy and effort involved to working your way through the grant process, through the tax laws and everything else just becomes too time consuming and nothing ever happens. So we're more than willing to help facilitate and fill that role.
And it's interesting that you mentioned COVID-19, because I'm seeing kind of I don't want to say a catch-22, but on both ends of that spectrum, I have a lot of friends, family members, and business associates that I know that have really stepped up in the wake of COVID-19 and want to give more because they see what kind of shape the individuals in our community are in. And at the same time, there are so many people out there that are out of work that are going to be in need of COVID-19 grants and funding from organizations and agencies such as yours. Have you been really busy the last couple of months?
Yeah, we have been busy. And in fact, we've just finished a round of grant applications for a couple different grant programs that we have. And I'd say we probably are right now in the process of reviewing 70 approximate different applications for various forms of funding for either COVID or other community-related programs in our area.
And how often do you guys usually go through that grant cycle? Is there a certain time of year that you know it's going to happen, or does it depend on the individual donor that you've worked with that has said, I want to do this every spring, or I want to do this at Christmas? How do you know when to do all of that?
Well, there are kind of two cycles that we work through, one of which is the grant cycles for the programs that we manage at the Community Foundation. And those are the Cochrane Family Fund grants, the Paul and Martha Reese grants, our Community Relief Fund, and a new fund that we've just recently set up for the benefit of the Barns of Rose Hill. So there are some funds that we actually administer and run the grant process for, and those are typically open for solicitation in the spring. So those are those applications that I mentioned, but we're constantly fulfilling grant requests for donor advised funds that are making contributions directly to nonprofit agencies. And that typically tends to be more year end as people see how their investments have gone during the year and are now looking to make year end distributions. I can tell you last year was an extremely busy year. You know, if you had money in the stock market last year, it was basically a good year, and we took a lot of year-end distributions from philanthropic donors who wanted to make contributions into their funds with stock proceeds. And one of the things that we're able to do is actually take those stock certificates directly in a contribution and facilitate making that contribution so the donor doesn't have to go and liquidate those funds and turn them into a check and send us a check. Their brokers can just do that. So that keeps us busy at the end of the year. So we have a couple different cycles.
Well, and it sounds like there is no way that you can't figure out in order for you to accept money to be able to give it back out again. You'll figure out a way regardless of how it is these people want to get it to you to begin with.
Yes, we're always willing to do that. Absolutely.
So before we wrap up, Larry, how would somebody get in touch with you? If somebody is interested in setting up or giving money or talking to you as a business to set some sort of fund up, what is the best way for them to do that and get more information?
Well, really, quite frankly, the easiest way to make that initial step is to view our website, which is cfnsv.org. And at that website, you'll be able to navigate your way through both instructions on how you can establish a fund, how you can give to a fund, and how, as a nonprofit agency, you can set up an account to receive information on the grant programs that we do run. But there is a fund search tool at that website that can literally take you to one of 120 different funds that, again, serve the entire community from Winchester down to Front Royal and all of Warren County. And you can interact directly through our web link with the mechanism to contribute to any one of those 120 funds.
Oh, and that's interesting too. So I could go on there, do a fund search and say, I want to make a donation to an organization that serves the Alice population, for example. And I can make whatever my amount of donation could be, $100 or $1,000 to that fund without having to set one up for myself. I can pick and choose and do my donations that way.
Exactly. And you can do it with a check. You can do it with a credit card. And in the case of some of the funds, and you know, I don't want to get into a long and involved explanation. Some of the funds, you're going to hit a donate button and it's going to take you directly to a donate page. Other funds, you're going to hit that donate and it will take you to a link on their web page where you can make that contribution. But we make it easy regardless.
Kind of like you've made this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
This could have gone so many different ways, but I am glad that I had at least done enough research to be able to hopefully ask you intelligent questions.
No, you did great. You know as much as I do at this point, so kudos for that.
So yeah, now I've already got my retirement job lined up. So once you've retired, maybe this is what I'll retire into the Community Foundation. But Larry, thank you for taking some time to have this conversation with me today. I do appreciate it, and I really appreciate the work that you do through the Community Foundation.
Thank you, Janet.
We are going to wrap up today's conversation with Larry Weiss. He is the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. I will put links to everything that we discussed today in the show notes page. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll have a brand new episode of The Valley Today on tap for you just a few minutes after noon. Meet me back here then.